Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. According to a January 2024 report by the Brookings Institution, between 2019 and 2022, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the nation's racial wealth gap increased. Now, in 2022, median Black wealth increased from $27,970 to $44,890, but continued to lag other racial groups. Median wealth for white households was $285,000. To put it more simply, for every $100 in wealth held by white households, Black households held only $15. Well, tonight, we're discussing several issues about financial literacy in the Black community, as well as upcoming events and resources, and also to try to address the root cause of this ongoing concern. My guests are Dr. Curtis Kidd Telemaque, Director of the HPS Center for Financial Excellence at Howard University, District 8 Prince George's County Councilmember Edward Burrows, and Gabby Molnick-Majewski. She's an attorney with the Hill East Civic Association in Washington, D.C. I want to thank all of you for joining this conversation. It's a very, very important conversation. Let me first start with some of those resources and events. And this is really important for our listeners. There's some events and resources coming up. Gabby, let me start with you. And if you could, just kind of give me a thumbnail sketch of exactly what the Hill East Civic Association is in DC.
You got it. And Harold, thanks for having me. I have to correct the record, though. So though my name is Gabby Molnick-Majewski, I am not with the Hill East Civic Association. I am actually the proud executive director of a nonprofit legal services organization here in DC, serving DC residents, that's called DC Affordable Law Firm.
Well, thank you
But we are teaming very closely with our friends at the Hill East Civic Association, which is actually a volunteer neighbor-based group over in Ward 7, right over by RFK. And they came to us at DC Affordable Law Firm. We are one of two organizations in DC, I should say, for DC Affordable Law Firm. We believe all community members deserve access to justice and that income should never be a barrier to an individual or a family's receipt of high quality legal representation. So we provide free and to a lesser extent, low cost legal services to DC residents in a full array of legal issues, two of which I'll talk a little bit about today, being heirs property and probate and estate planning. And we, DCALF, DC Affordable Law Firm, is one of two organizations that is charged with leading DC's very first heirs property program, which is a program designed to provide free legal services to folks who have tangled title where a loved one passed and their home was never conveyed properly, which leaves property as vulnerable to foreclosure, tax sale, a whole host of issues and ills. And so our friends at the Hill East Civic Association actually came to us after reading the press release about our program with DC's Department of Housing and Community Development. And they said, we think this is a big issue in our community because there are a number of aging homeowners. There are people who have been in intergenerational family homes for a number of years. And what we don't want is the neighborhood to start changing because people can't maintain possession of those homes. So our friends at this Hill East Civic Association came to us and said, how can we team together to bring information and empower the members of our community? So that's the event that we have coming up. This Saturday on the 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., we are going to be at St. Coletta's, which is a school right over by RFK Stadium. And we are hosting an event called Securing Your Legacy, a community gathering on planning, probate, and property. And so we're going to be teaming with the Civic Association, but also with what I call sister legal services organizations, other legal services organizations, in addition to DCALF, that are serving low and modest income DC residents. And we're going to have a really great collaborative event where we are going to be providing educational sessions on what is estate planning? Why could that be helpful for you? Why is that something we believe everyone should be thinking about it, but particularly in the Black and Brown communities, because this is so under-discussed. But also, what can we do on the spot to do we're calling them property checkups, to look at who actually holds the title to a home and whether it was properly conveyed. So often we see clients at DC Affordable Law Firm where they come to us saying, well, my mom died and she gave me the house, but there's a real formal legal process that never actually happened. And so the property may still be in the deceased mom's name. And so we're going to do property checkups, and then we're going to be doing actually on the spot intakes for folks to be able to partner with, hopefully with DCALF or one of our partner organizations that are there, to receive free estate planning services after the event.
And I want to say, I do want to do a bit of a drill down a little bit later in the discussion, but I also wanted to ask Prince George's County Council member Burrows about this program about improving credit scores, specifically something that's happening in your district, but also some of the resources regarding this that are available countywide.
Thank you so much for having me. This week, we announced a partnership with the Prince George's County Federal Credit Union and also the Prince George's County Financial Empowerment Center, where any resident who lives in our district will be able to open up a secure account at the Federal Credit Union, pay $44 a month. We will also pay $44 a month to match it. We're going to report that history of on-time payments to all the credit bureaus. And by the end of the program, every single dollar that you put in as a resident, you get to keep. And every single dollar that we put in as the government, you get to keep. So you walk away doubling your investment in 1 year's time with a 1-year track record of making on-time payments. We've seen individuals raise their credit scores by 70 points in this program.
What was the genesis of this idea? How did this come about, council member?
Actually, someone on our staff here, Plachette Monroe, worked with the Financial Empowerment Center and knew that this program existed. I had never heard of this program, but a lot of these programs, the community doesn't know, they don't know that they exist, and also they struggle with funding. And so we were able to carve out a certain amount of money to do this using our MGM Impact Grant funds. I represent National Harbor MGM. As a condition of them being here, there's a certain amount of money that must go to the local community to improve within a 6-mile radius of the casino. And so we've been rewriting the plan every year to roll out new initiatives and programs to help the residents in the impacted area.
Dr. Telemar, can you give me the 30,000 at why this is continuing to be problematic? I kind of, shared the wealth gap between, the Black community, more broadly communities of color, and white communities. We've been hearing this honestly ad nauseum for many, many years. Why is this continuing to be an issue?
Yeah, so I could give you 30,000 feet. I can give you 3 feet, right? So
I'll take both.
Okay, right. So 30,000 feet. I was going to say I believe, but I mean, these are facts that the economic system in America was not made equally for everyone, period. There's 30,000 feet. That is a fact. And so now, as we roll forward in time, those systems are still the same systems. And so, for instance, right, I can give you just a broader example. Let's just say that Curtis has a credit score of 800 and then goes to sort of try to raise capital for a small business. Business still doesn't give him money. So the credit part of it doesn't really matter. Not to say there's anything wrong with having a high credit score, but I'm just saying that there are cases where you can see the system not working. That's A. B, there are multiple components of what makes a wealth gap a wealth gap. And it is not just how much you make. It is not how much you can bequeath. It is more so maybe racial redlining could have come into it. So real estate valuation. It is more so the health disparities that certain groups have in between their white counterparts that also come into play. So there is multiple items here. And so if we just continue to focus on one component of this wealth gap, then I don't think we're going to close it at the speed that it is actually expanding.
Gabby, you are kind of nodding your head, listening to what Dr. Telemark was saying.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the wealth gap was not created overnight and was created with great intention, quite frankly. And the policies, the more I read and the more I learn about the intentionality, but also the many ways in which Black people have been deprived of property, have been unable to access credit, unable to access homes in certain places, unable to pass along homes because of just the inequities that continue to exist. It's a multitudinal problem. And I think, the one stat that riles me a lot that is one that was just published recently by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And they noted Black families account for 14.2% of households in the US, yet they only own 4.5% of the total family wealth in the country. And these are direct correlations of bias, discrimination in, I would say, centrally kind of the legal and the housing systems, because housing is one of the greatest places where families across the board, regardless of race, can build and convey wealth. And so by the policies of redlining and everything else that was put in place to prevent people from being able to buy homes, continue to hold homes, and pass them on to subsequent generations, we are where we are today because of all of that coming to a head together.
Councilmember Burrows, you represent an economically diverse district. In talking about programs, resources, and more generally financial literacy, who are you talking to within your constituency, and what are they saying to you about this issue?
No, economic stability is the number one issue that we're facing. And it's so many other things are connected to it. When we look at issues around the stress that occurs in a family when there's a loss of a job or you can't pay your bills, those mental health concerns that occur as a result of those financial issues in families have a huge impact on the district. 20% of Prince George's County High School students contemplated suicide. And when we talk to a lot of those young people about what's going on, they're seeing domestic violence in their homes as a result of money. They're seeing just incredible issues. And when we look at the rise in juvenile crime in the county, a lot of that goes to our young people not having as many quality opportunities as they deserve to engage in internships and jobs programs and things of that nature. And so I'm hearing it from all ends, but there's not a week that goes by that my office doesn't get a request for utility assistance, mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and it's greatly impacted the district. And it's not just individuals who are living in apartments. I have people in I can't remember your name. I'm sorry.
Gabby or Dr.
Gabby.
Tellum. Yeah.
Yes. As Gabby said, we have senior citizens whose homes are almost paid off, but they're struggling to pay for their property taxes. And they're at risk of losing their homes for some of this. So it's been difficult financially.
Hold that point, because I got to take a break, and I do want to make sure that I get a final comment from Dr. Telemark after the break. Don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. Stay with us. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. The original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next. That's on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our discussion about financial literacy in the Black community. My guests are Dr. Curtis Kidd Telemark, director of the HPS Center for Financial Excellence at Howard University, District 8 Prince George's County Council member Edward Burrows, and Gabby Malnick-Majewski. She is an attorney with the DC Affordable Law Firm. Before the break, council member, you were talking about some of the issues in your community, kind of piggybacking on what Gabby was saying, but I want to go back to that. But Dr. Telemark, before the break, we were talking about the 30,000-foot view of financial literacy or illiteracy in the Black community. Talk to me about the 3-foot view that you were talking about. How is that fixed, even if it's from individual household to individual household?
Yep, good. So we spoke about the multitude of components that created the wealth gap. So now one of what it seems like initiative that people, powers that be, whatever you want to say, are trying to close the wealth gap is financial literacy. Let me say this about the financial literacy at a very, very 3-foot level off the ground. Mm-hmm. It is in my belief that financial literacy should be in 3 sort of phases, right? Financial literacy, I think, is fantastic. And I understand that as the basic premise of understanding of financial publications, formulas, things of that nature. Financial proficiency, right, is more so being able to use some of what it is that you learn by being financial literate and sort of moving them forward for your particular situation in life. And then financial fluency, right? So literacy, proficiency, and fluency. And in my center, I need for my Howard graduates to be financially fluid and fluent when they leave me, insofar as I am making portfolio managers, fund managers, venture capitalists, right? So strategies of a higher level of financial acumen, right? And so if we are going to push forward towards a financially illiterate community, the problem that I see there is that maybe you are talking to someone who doesn't need to be financially literate. I may need to be financially proficient. If I am 40 and I never got the literacy and training, but now I have a home, right? Then you are given a mismatch in terms of the education of when it was that I was supposed to be financially literate. And so I would advocate to push back the financial literacy component 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade-ish, proficient high school-ish. So by the time they get to me, they should be proficient. And then I make them fluent if they are, let's say, inside of one of my academies and want to be a private equity mogul or something of the sort. So I just want to add a little bit of nuance there in terms of this financial literacy campaign that was very much in the weeds, that was very much low and down to the ground, 3 feet, 2 feet. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And I know that we have to let you go, but we will certainly be in touch. Dr. Curtis Kidd Telemark, thank you so very, very much for participating in this conversation.
Of course, anytime, Harold.
Gabby, was he talking your language? It sounds like it.
He sure was. And I think both Representative Burrows and then Dr. Telemark's remarks make me think so much about the client base that we serve at DC Affordable Law Firms. So we hold ourselves out as serving a modest income population and folks who typically have traditionally not qualified for most of the free legal services available in DC, yet they can't afford private attorney who costs anywhere from $400 an hour to $1,000 an hour in DC. And, when I think about who the clients are that we're serving. So we call them modest income earners. These are folks who are living at or below 80% of the area median income adjusted for DC. And so these are folks, it's a family, a single parent with one child earning just over $40,000 to $81,000 a year. So to Dr. Burrows' point, Representative Burrows' point, these are folks who are working, earning income, paying taxes, and also living in a jurisdiction, and I call that jurisdiction the whole DMV, where it is very, very expensive to live and work. And so these are families that are drawing in incomes, and yet the incomes, I think, across the board haven't kept up with the cost of what it takes to actually live in these areas, from housing, childcare, transportation, you name it. We live in an expensive place, which is why at DCALF, we changed our entire model thanks to just shout out and props to Access to Justice funding from the city, because that's a funding stream that has enabled us to shift from a model of saying we'll have clients pay reduced rates for services. That wasn't working for clients, and it really didn't meet clients' actual economic realities. And so we found that even a reduced rate for representation was out of reach for many of our clients. And so Access to Justice funding from the city has been instrumental in enabling us to now serve the same client base, but to do so for free, which makes a huge difference for everyday people when they are counting their dollars and making sure that their dollars are going to meet what their basic household needs are. And so, I think it resonated with me hearing a Representative Burrows just speak about the fact that these are not people who are in kind of the lowest income thresholds of poverty. These are families that are hardworking, modest income earners, and yet people are struggling, and the economic strain that people are facing is real.
Council member, tell me a story. And the story that I want to hear from you is in this conversation, whether it was Gabby or Dr. Telemark, even myself, we are educated people. I don't know what your checking account looks like, but you are an elected official. Where did you get your financial literacy education? When did it start for you? And how is it that you are not in the position of the kind of members of the community that Gabby just described? Hardworking people, not people at the poverty level, hardworking people, jobs, income, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that I think is common for people my age. I'm in my early 30s. And for a lot of us, we learn trial and error, and we do the best that we can.
More error than trial, I'm sure.
We do the best that we can. We know that we're supposed to save, but in a lot of cases, the education is not there. It really isn't there. And I'm happy that 4 years ago, when I was on the school board, we initiated something that goes into effect this year, that the class of 2024 will be the first class to pass, to be mandated to pass financial literacy in order to graduate. And actually, 4 years ago, I came on the show and we talked about it when we first put it into place. And so I'm hoping that by making financial literacy a graduation requirement, we expose young people to the conversations. Hopefully that'll pique their interest and increase the knowledge base. But formally, I can tell you that there wasn't at least for myself, a formal process. I mean, I YouTube things, to be honest with you, even at this point, to try to teach myself some of these things. But across the county, across the region, it's important that we institute these programs. Parents can't pass down what they don't know, and I'm not talking about my parents; they're doing a great job. But just in general, some of these things are very nuanced. Some of these things are not completely intuitive, and I've seen a huge gap. One of my very best friends, is a school board member in District 1, David Murray. He's a Caucasian gentleman who grew up in Bowie, and he was investing since he was in high school, and that has benefited his financial portfolio tremendously. I didn't know anything about investing when I was in high school, and so I'm playing catch up, frankly. And so I just, to the extent that we continue to have conversations like this one, so I thank you for hosting this, because people really don't know and people want to know. And to the extent that we can provide services and education is what we absolutely need to do.
Well, you said briefly, you said your parents did a great job, but what did that job look like when you were younger and when you talked about money with your parents? Because I think that is key. In some households, you've got the whole stereotype about grandma putting money in the mattress, and that's not always wholly inaccurate. I know that my grandfather used to tell me all the time, without even giving me specifics, you've got to protect your credit. Without good credit, you can't do anything. But he really wasn't specific. And so what did you hear as a very young man that allowed you to move through the trial and error that you spoke about?
I would say the main thing that I heard or learned from my parents was essentially, if you don't work, you don't eat. The importance of hard work and living below your means. I had so many friends and a lot of friends who had nicer clothes than I had, right? I mean, hundreds of dollars or your tennis shoes, but you're borrowing money from me, and my shoes came from Nordstrom's rack clearance, right? So, or like the latest game, I didn't have any of those things, but it's those lessons that have really helped me. I can tell you, I purchased a house almost 2 years ago. But I knew credit cards were bad. I was always told credit cards were bad. I don't have any credit cards now. But when I went to try to initially start the home buying process, everyone told me, you need to get a credit card. Make it a secure credit card. The on-time payments. You need to build your credit history. I'm like, wait, my whole life I've heard credit cards are so bad, but now you're telling me I need a credit card? It didn't make sense to me. And even now it doesn't make sense to me completely. It's those things that we hear along the way and those trials and errors that we try to make sense of, but it's not always intuitive and it's not always clear. And to your point, What you mentioned with your grandfather, yeah, you need good credit, but we need an A to Z plan. Exactly how, what should I be doing today to accomplish that goal? And same for investing. We all know that we should invest. We all know having money sit in a bank account where you're not making any gains on it is not the best place for it to be. But how do you invest in the stock market? Just things that we hear on TV or that we hear on the radio. But how do I, as a young person with not a ton of money, but with the little bit I have, how do I start investing? I gave you the comparison of David Murray in District 1. I mean, he knew how to do all of that stuff starting in high school.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that benefited him.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, because I think one thing that is central to this conversation in some ways is that money is a topic that lots of people and lots of families don't like talking about for one reason or another. It could be because there's a scarcity of it. And so why should I be talking about or thinking about something that I'm struggling to keep hold of to make ends meet day to day? And so there is a privilege that comes with that ability to think about, how do I plan? How do I invest? Those are not accessible concepts for many people, because if that's not a history of your family, then, and the education system, I love this program in PG County, but systems aren't designed to, school is amazing, but you don't often walk out with some of that practical nitty gritty content that can propel you forward in adulthood. And so I think those are pieces, but the other piece is that, you talked about your peer council member, and I think, I don't know anything about that person or their situation, but what I can say kind of in thinking about how the wealth gap ties in with inheritances and the ability and the privilege that could come with the ability to invest money and make money grow for you. If there's a paucity of kind of conversations about this happening, and these conversations aren't occurring, and Black communities in particular are already stepping into this at a disadvantaged place, where they likely, based on studies, people of color in the US inherit $100,000 less than on average than their white counterparts, right? And so there are kind of systemic inequities that exist before we even get to conversations around financial literacy. And I think, to Dr. Telemark's remarks, there does have to be gradation in meeting people where they are and offering customized solutions, because education around money for one person is going to look very different than it may for another, depending on your background, the tools at your disposal, and what you have to work with at the end of the day.
Like I asked Councilmember Burrows, and obviously you two are, as very, very different, culturally, racially. He's from here, you're from New Jersey. What is your story? How did you get your financial literacy information, education? Where did it come from?
Well, that I would say that I don't know that I had the best rearing in this realm. My family was modest income. I paid for law school, where I came out of law school with over $160,000 in debt, right? Mm-hmm. And doing public interest work where I was making $42,000 a year.
Hearing that.
Yeah, but I came out doing the work I wanted to do, and I made $42,000 a year. And so it was only very recently that, thanks to the federal loan repayment assistance programs, thanks to to DC's loan repayment assistance program, another plug for Access to Justice, funded by the city. Those were programs that I had to kind of learn about on the fly. I don't think when I went to law school, knowing this is the career I wanted to take on, that I had any full appreciation of what the debt was that I was incurring, what that would mean for myself, and kind of the long-term implications of that. I knew the work I wanted to do and the people I wanted to work with, and that I think I would do things with wider eyes open, certainly if I think about myself. But I think that only speaks to the fact that these aren't conversations that really regularly happen. And I think that when I think about the work that we are doing at DC Affordable Law Firm, we are really coming at our work from an empowerment model. And though we are not doing financial literacy, what I would say is our work is very centered across all of our practices, doing estate planning, probate, heirs property, but also immigration and family law, in what we can do to deliver economic justice and help people secure assets, pass on assets, really put themselves and their families in a posture to be able to see it forward to the next generation in better ways. And so, I think about that a lot. And just plugging back to our event this Saturday, that wills, estate planning, that is something that is so under discussed, and you put it in my family lens before, Harold. It took 2 years for me to get my own mom to do a will, because people don't like thinking about it. Nobody wants to think about kind of what's beyond. And the reality is that the need to estate plan is not age specific, and it's not based on wealth and this concept of wealth. I think the term estate planning, people think about, well, I need to have $1 million to do that. You don't. If you have a home, if you have things that you care about and you want them to be passed on, even if you don't have a home, if there are belongings that you cherish and value, being able to set that trajectory for where those things go, and not only where your possessions go and what that means to the loved ones who survive you, but also in thinking about who can make decisions for you in the event you don't have capacity. So if you have Alzheimer's or you fall into a coma, but there are bills that need to be paid and there are things that need to be done, and accessing your accounts, who do you want making those decisions for you? Yeah. Who do you want making health decisions for you? And so all of that kind of falls into this bundle of estate planning. And that's one of the big things that for your listeners, I hope people can take away, is that estate planning is something we think should be a universal concept and something that all people should be able to do. And the reality is that very few people in America do it. Fewer people of color do it. And certainly when you don't have as much money as someone who might have those millions of dollars, you're far less likely to do it. And so we want this to be something that's accessible, and we're doing it for free along with many of our sister organizations as well.
Council member, when you look at the expanse of your constituents in District 8, but even more broadly in Prince George's, outside of the resources that you and the other members of the council or the government is making available, but talk to me about the hearts and minds kind of piece, those kinds of discussions that you were having with your constituents. It's one thing to say, this is available, go online, pick up the phone, come to this event. But isn't there a deeper conversation that you have to have?
Absolutely. And we're starting to have those conversations now. And to Gabby's point earlier, is that some of these conversations are a little taboo. Not everyone likes to talk about their finances. Not everyone it's to some, it feels embarrassing to say, I don't know anything about any of this, right? And so how do we create a space where we're learning together and we're all doing our best? We've done our best up until this point, but let's see what else we can learn, what other services we can take advantage of to improve our conditions, because everyone wants to improve their condition, for the most part. And how do we create spaces and host events in places where people feel comfortable and safe to ask their questions and to participate? Is also, there's been a lot of misinformation out there, or where it's unclear as to what's a scam, what's not a scam, what is a good thing to do, what is not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And so how do we provide credible and accurate information to residents as well? Because there's a lot of hesitancy and resistance, but there is a lot of need. There's a lot of need because, like I said before, people can't pass down what they don't know. And if your family doesn't have a history of strong financial practices and you've grown up in a place, you're likely to repeat those cycles unless there's some education and support. And so to the extent that we can start early in the schools, we're trying to do that as well, but not forget about our older adults as well who need this support.
I only have about 4 minutes left, but I wanted to make sure that I got the information out again. Councilmember Burrows, the program that you mentioned earlier about helping to improve one's credit, is it still open? How can people find out more information about that if possible?
Yes, it is still open. We have 576 slots. It's on a first come, first served basis. We're having a meeting to discuss it on May 11th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Bethany Christian Church off of Allentown Road. And then on June 8th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we're having another informational at St. Stephen's Baptist Church off of Temple Hills Road. So we still have a lot of slots available. So I encourage people to sign up. We just announced the program yesterday, so this is a good timing. But oftentimes, once we send out our mailers, we send mailers to almost 20,000 residents. Once we send that mailer out, we generally get waiting lists for our program. So I encourage people.
Quick, is there a website that you can share?
I believe you can get there off of our county website. If you go to my county website, I'm trying to look here. If you go to the Prince George's County Community College website under the Financial Empowerment Center, you can get it there, or you can contact my office directly.
Okay, thank you. And real quick, Gabby, the event on Saturday, what's the address, the times, and everything?
Absolutely. So we'll be at St. Coletta's at 1901 Independence Avenue Southeast, right over by RFK. It's, I believe, closest to the Stadium Armory Metro. There's parking on site if someone's planning to drive. This is open and free for DC residents. So though it's over in the Hill East community, it's open to all. Though we are capping registration at 100 people. So please hop online, register, bring a friend, register for your friend too, and come because we want this to be a spark and really an opportunity for people to learn, to take action for themselves, but also that they then pay it forward. We want to sow some seeds across the community so that more and more people are proactively addressing property title issues and planning for themselves and their future, and really getting ahead of some of the challenges that can be really detrimental and lead to the loss of intergenerational homes for families. So we hope folks will join us. The website for the event for people to sign up is, if you type in hilleastcivicAssociation.org/estate-planning. And there's a shorter website link as well, or reach out to me at DC Affordable Law Firm and we'll get you in the right place to register.
I want to thank you both for sharing in this really, really important conversation, and hopefully you'll be able to help a great many people. That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, April 23rd. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.